Welcome to the Unreal BootCamp lesson on logging out an authenticated user. A quick note that this lesson was updated and re-released after the brainCloud 5.2 release. In this updated lesson, we're going to cover how to use the brainCloud wrapper's logout method. We're going to start this lesson in the API reference. The logout request essentially ends the user's session with the brainCloud server. Once the user is logged out, they can no longer make brainCloud requests. This request takes in one parameter, forget user. If you pass in true to this request, then the profile ID that is saved to the user's device will be reset. Passing in false would simply end the brainCloud session, but not clear the saved profile ID. This is an important parameter. Remember, the reconnect request depends on the saved profile ID to reconnect to the server. Without it, the user would need to log back in with an authenticated identity. If the user used an anonymous identity instead, and the profile ID was cleared from their device, then the user will no longer be able to access their account and their account will be orphaned. Open Xcode and navigate to the network callback.h file. Declare a pair of public methods called onLogoutRequestCompleted and onLogoutRequestFailed. Navigate to the networkmanager.h file. Declare a public method called logout. Then declare a pair of private callback functions. Make sure to mark these methods as a U function with a callback category. These methods will be used to handle the response for a logout request. Finally, declare a private network callback handler object called mLogoutCallback. Navigate to the networkmanager.cpp file. In the constructor, bind the private callback methods that we just declared to the callback handler success and failure delegates. Scroll down and implement the network manager's logout method. In the body, check to see if the user is authenticated. If the user is not authenticated, log an error message, and if the callback pointer is set, we'll invoke the callback's onLogoutRequestFailed method. If the user is authenticated, invoke the brainCloud logout request, passing in true and the address of the callback delegate as the arguments. It is important to note that this request will end the brainCloud session. Passing in true simply means that the saved profile ID will be cleared from the user's device. Passing in false would simply have ended the brainCloud session, but not clear the profile ID. Another note, if the user is authenticated anonymously and we clear the saved profile ID, then the user will no longer be able to access their account and their account will be orphaned. If the user had an account with an authenticated identity, then they would be able to log back in with their credentials. Scroll down to the bottom of the file and implement the onLogoutCallback method. In the body of the method, log the response data. Finally, if the callback pointer is set, invoke the callback's onLogoutRequestCompleted method. Next, implement the onLogoutError method. In the body of the method, log the JSON error. Finally, if the callback pointer is set, invoke the callback's onLogoutRequestFailed method. Navigate to the brainCloud dialog widget.cpp file. Scroll down to the onLogout button clicked method. Delete the to-do statement, and in its place, invoke the network manager's logout method. While we're in this file, we'll also replace the to-do statement in the method below. First we're going to get, then we'll cast the game mode from the world. Safety check the pointer, and then we'll invoke the game mode's handle authentication method we wrote in a previous lesson. Next, navigate to the space shooter game mode base.h file, and we'll override the onLogoutRequestCompleted method. Navigate to the space shooter game mode base.cpp file. Scroll to the bottom. Implement the onLogoutRequestCompleted method. In the body, get and cast the brainCloud dialog from the dialog manager. Invoke the brainCloud dialog's refresh method. Click the Run button to build the project and launch the Unreal Editor. Once the Unreal Editor opens, run the game. Navigate to the brainCloud dialog and click Logout. We have now successfully logged out from brainCloud, but since our account used an anonymous identity, that account has now been orphaned. Click Login to authenticate with a new anonymous identity. Stop the game. Before we end this lesson, there's one more thing I'd like to show you. We're going to use the brainCloud wrapper's logout request to keep track of when the user exits the game and thus their brainCloud session. brainCloud added support in 5.2 to keep track of users' session durations, but it requires logging out from brainCloud. In this situation though, we don't want to clear the user's saved profile ID. Return back into Xcode and navigate to the networkmanager.h file. Declare a public method called endSession. Navigate to the networkmanager.cpp file. Implement the endSession method. In the body of the method, invoke brainCloud's logout request, passing in false and null as the arguments. This request will end the brainCloud session when the game is closed, but it won't clear the profile ID that's saved to the user's device. Next, invoke the run callback's request. The end session method is going to be invoked when the application is closing, and as a result, there won't be another tick called. To ensure the logger request is actually sent, we need to invoke the run callback's request here, which will force the logger request to be sent right away. Navigate to the space shooter game mode base.h file and override the endplay method. Navigate to the space shooter game mode base.cpp file. Implement the endplay method. In the body of the method, check the endplay reason parameter. If the game was quit or was closed in the editor, then check to see if the user is authenticated. If the user is authenticated, invoke the network manager's end session method. Click the Run button to build the project and launch the Unreal editor. Once the Unreal editor opens, run the game. After we authenticate, wait 5 seconds or so and then stop the game. Open your web browser and navigate to the brainCloud portal. On the left, click Users, then User Browser. Click the top user in the recent active list. On the right, click Go to User. On the left, click User Activity. Notice that we were able to capture this user's most recent session duration. Note that the user's first session duration was not captured since the code was not in place when the game was stopped. Capturing session durations is a powerful new data point that will show you how long your users are actually using your game or app for. Universal authentication is the next lesson in the Unreal BootCamp.